The diminished scale is often one of the most overly complicated things that you can learn in jazz. So for that reason, I put together a series of videos on the diminished scale to help you demystify it. In this first video, we're basically looking at some scale fingerings, and I'm going to show you by far the easiest, I think, and most accessible ways of looking at the diminished scale and using it for jazz guitar applications. Hey everybody, Jamie Holroyd here, helping you learn jazz guitar. If you're new around here and you're looking for a structured guide learning jazz guitar, then please check out my free beginner jazz guitar guide, which is linked and listed below. Furthermore, if you'd like to get any of the downloadable resources for this class, then please check out the link in the description. Let's get on with the class. When it comes to the diminished scale, there are basically two easy ways to map out this scale on the guitar. The first is through using a system of tetrachords. A tetrachord is basically a 4-note scale, or a 4-note cell. So if you look at maybe a G diminished arpeggio starting with the G on the 3rd fret of the low E string, you can see there that I'm basically just using fingers 1 and 4 to generate that diminished arpeggio, right? So played slowly. This can be used as a basis to see the full scale that can be found within that little finger span right there. So the actual tetrachord that we're going to be using is going to build as a G half-whole diminished scale. So starting on the G, we're going to go up a half step, then we're going to go up a whole step, and then we're going to go up a half step again. So that's our first tetrachord. Now, all you have to do, like with the arpeggio, is basically move that finger in. I'm using the fingers 1, 2, and I'm using the 4-finger to the next string, but then move it up a fret. And there you can see that you basically have a full diminished scale. So played slowly, there's a full G half-whole diminished scale. Now, the good thing about that is that that fingering, or that tetrachord, is movable to the entire guitar neck. So if you want to play a bigger 2 or 3 octave scale, then all you have to do is keep that going. So there's the G again, and now remember we go to the next string, but we move it up a fret, and that gives us the full span of the entire guitar neck. So that entire big span scale sounds like this. And then played a little bit slower. So that's one way in which you can see the diminished scale across the guitar neck. The other way is by using a system of cells. So if we go back once again to diminished 7 arpeggio, then let's look at this over a dominant 7 flat 9 chord. So if we use this shape right here, we're starting on the flat 9, going to the 3rd, going to the 5th, and then the flattened 7th. And if we move that up in minor thirds, that gives us 4 positions on the entire guitar neck. Now, what I'd like you to do is take this position, but add the note which is from the diminished arpeggio with your index finger underneath. So this one now becomes this shape. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 notes. Let's go with 4 notes. And as you can see, that is symmetrical, so we can actually generate a fingering from those arpeggios too. So, or what I mean by fingering is a full scale, a full half-whole diminished scale. So all you have to do to make this scale is basically start on the note, this note here for the first position, the F. And if you use the fingering 1, 3, 4, then the fingering 1, 2, 4, then the fingering 1, 3, 4, then 1, 2, 4, that's going to generate a half-whole diminished scale on the top 4 strings of the guitar neck. And the good thing about that is all you have to do is move that scale up in minor thirds, and you're going to have basically inversions of that scale. So for example, in diminished chords, you get that. So you're not getting the repeated notes, but you're getting inversions of that same chord. So for example, 1 3 4 1 2 4 1 3 4 1 2 4 moved up 1 3 4 1 2 4 1 3 4 1 2 4. Same thing, 1 3 4 1 2 4 1 3 4 1 2 4, and then the same thing. So basically you can play the diminished scale in all the positions of the guitar neck just using the same fingering. Of course the downside is you obviously, like when you use the chords, you have to be able to know the starting note to accurately move that position up. Unlike conventional scales like say the C major scale, you always tend to lead those by the root, so when you play those up in the next position, you're always kind of letting the root, dictate where the scale starts and finishes. So with this one, you've got to know, in the key of G, for example, 7, flat 9, 3rd, 5th. I'll play through all the scale positions now, just so you can hear them. The first thing that I'd like you to do is to practice all of those 4 positions just in the key of G7 flat 9. Play them nice and slow, really get used to visualizing that symmetrical movement across the fingerboard. After that, I'd like you to learn them in all 12 keys. That's right, all 12 keys. Just do a couple, of course. It is diminished as well, so you will find that many of them have the same starting notes. The last thing that we're going to do is look at how we can map the scale across all 6 strings using the same method. You can easily adapt the scale to fit on all 6 strings using the same fingering as before. We just need to revise our drop-free diminished chords first. So in the key of G7, G7 flat 9 diminished chords. Here's one with the flat 9 in the bass, 3rd in the bass, 5th in the bass, and 7th in the bass. We're going to play off these to generate the other 2 strings. So we're going to start on the flat 9, and we just use a 1 3 4, a 1 2 4, and then we're back where we started, 1 3 4, and we've got our diminished scale across all 6 strings. So the full scale. And you basically do the same thing when you move up to the 3rd of the chord. So from the flat 9, we go to the 3rd, we use a 1 3 2 4, a 1 2 4, and then we're back where we started. So you can add those to your all 12 keys, but as you can see, then you really need to see that cell clear before you start to add the bass notes. That concludes the first lesson on the diminished scale. I hope this helps you out. If you found it useful, then subscribe for part 2 when we're going to look into movable cells and lines that come from all these scales, and now you can move them across the entire fingerboard.